All right, so welcome back to the CAMPS group of emerging technologies. Today, Jake and I are talking with Dave Henderson, who is the president and the co-founder of CyberStreams. They provide IT services for manufacturers in the Pacific Northwest. And so today we are excited to talk about cybersecurity for businesses. This is a big conversation that we hear amongst the CAMPS organization. We're going to be breaking today into two different parts. The first part of this conversation is going to be centered around how can any manufacturer and business protect themselves from cybersecurity concerns, where the second part of this conversation will be more directed towards CMMC and ITAR for people that are working with the federal government. So today, thank you, Dave, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure. I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, so to kick things off, what I want to ask you about is, first and foremost, what are common threats that businesses are facing today? I hear a lot in the news, ransomware, and there's just, it seems to open up a lot of questions and what people need to do. Can you provide some insight?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, quite frankly, ransomware is the really great threat right now. But ransomware falls under a category that we in IT we've been calling malware. So there are quite a few different, manufactured softwares designed to do nasty things. For example, you let an employee work from home and they remote into their computer via their home computer. They have poor security on their home computer, and the hackers have installed something called the keystroke logger. So it's a simple little software that records every keystroke they make. And before you know it, they've got username and passwords, things like that. So there are a host of various malwares, with ransomware being the real big one, and it's insidious in the industry that is formed around it, for sure. I would say when I kind of think of key threats, phishing is the really big threat right now. So that all those really creative emails designed to get you to click on the wrong link, that's the main entry point today.
Okay, so that kind of ties into what I was going to probably ask you next. I want to try to figure out then, like, if I was a company, I'm trying to protect myself about this. Is the most common attack, is it phishing? So is that an email, or is that through LinkedIn, or how do people most commonly get penetrated?
Well, if you've been following the news, there's been a couple of really big hacks lately, that the pipeline, right, the meat packer, and one that's really close to home for me was the Kaseya VSA hack. In the Kaseya VSA hack, Kaseya VSA is the software that companies like me use to access and remote control their clients' computers. And the Russian hackers successfully hacked about 40 users of that software, affecting about 1,500 customers, and they were asking a 70 million ransom. So we saw SolarWinds, Kaseya VSA. I think we're going to see more of those types of attacks, where they call it supply chain. Those make big news because they're big one-time events. But what doesn't make the news every day is the thousands of people dying in car accidents, and the thousands of customers getting hacked via email phishing. That's the really, really big threat. But because it's so ubiquitous and common, it doesn't make the news every day.
Hey, we were talking the other week, and you were telling me how just how organized the hacker community is, and I think we were talking about the Russian attack a while back, and you were kind of explaining that once you get hit once, there's a chance you could pay a ransom, and the next hacker down the line is going to call you up the following week. Can you elaborate kind of on how organized the threats are out there?
Yeah, when you think of the aerospace supply chain, right? Boeing might be the prime, and Boeing might have dozens of suppliers, and you might be a supplier to a supplier of the supplier to Boeing. That sophistication of business is coming around in the hacking community. There are even people now specializing in negotiating your ransomware for you. And what Jake is referring to is sometimes you'll get two different hacking businesses that will collaborate on hitting ransomware in your environment. So the first one will put ransomware in there, encrypt all your stuff. The second one encrypt that. So you'll pay one ransom and then find out your shit is still encrypted, and you got to pay a second ransom. There's a lot of sophistication showing up in the. I like to refer to it as a business because these guys are very sophisticated and making a lot of money at it. It's an enterprise.
And I think it's kind of apparent your analogy or comments about, you know, Boeing being the prime and there's a supplier and a supplier and a supplier. These folks probably aren't going to spend a ton of time, and maybe they are going after Boeing, but more likely they're going to go after the supplier or find a weaker link in the chain, which makes it more relevant and important for smaller businesses to be thinking about cybersecurity so that they are not that weak link.
Sure. Do you remember when Target was hacked? It was an HVAC vendor that got hacked, and they had access to some administration stuff, and they were able to get through them. So they're calling it a supply chain, right?
Yep. So on that note, how do smaller businesses get started when they decide that they really want to beef up their cybersecurity?
You know, this is a topic that frustrates me because I meet business owner after business owner after business owner that just doesn't believe they're at risk. And, you know, it starts with understanding that you have a risk and that you need to fill that hole. You know, would you operate your business without the proper cash flow and credit? Plenty do, but they don't last, right? It's that there's a myriad of things that we have to deal with as business owners. And it starts with being mindful and making it a priority. It's that simple. It's not about technology. It's about culture. It's about people. It's about process, right? And being serious about it.
Yeah, I think that's what we learned when we started going down this path a while back. Was this isn't something you go purchase a piece of software and install it and wipe your hands, I'm done. It's really establishing internal practices and good cybersecurity behavior. So that cultural element became very apparent to us as we started going down this path.
You know, when I find business owners taking it most seriously, shortly after they've been hacked.
Yeah.
Before, they can't afford it. Can't afford it. Afterwards, they can afford anything. Yeah, don't wait.
Oh, go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to ask a question on that one. So like in my world as a software as a subscription service, like, so we work a lot with manufacturers to help them evolve technology. And there's a lot of old school concerns about the cloud. And so I have my own opinions in ways that you secure it, but I always like to explain that it's the organization that you're working with is in control of the security that they put in place. But do you have any insight to be able to share with people when they have concerns about cloud?
You know, Ben, the first thing that comes to mind for me there is that I have been using this new phrase, cyber resiliency, right? And in NIST 800-171, the NIST cybersecurity framework, in cyber resiliency, the first thing you're supposed to do is assume you are going to be hacked and be prepared to deal with that, right? So this notion that anything is safe is you know, the wrong notion to have. Now, the cloud, what the hell does that mean anyway? You know, NIST has this cloud framework, and you have platform as a service, you have infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. 10 years ago, you know, you'd go put your physical server in rack space or something like that, and you were in the cloud. Pretty soon, things like Salesforce.com and Azure and those sorts of things allow you to take your compute infrastructure and run it. That's platform as a service. And now almost anything you can do in your business can be delivered via a cloud delivered software that you interact with the software layer, and your provider does everything else. When you're doing that, you're putting your cybersecurity trust in that data and what you're doing in the hands of that provider. Now, there are thousands of cloud providers, and they range from big to small. They're all over the place. I think it's important to ask before you sign up with a cloud provider what their strategies are, what they're doing and investing in to ensure that your data is safe, right? It's important to ask those questions. I use a software called ConnectWise. It's kind of funny. ConnectWise bought a company called Scout, and they're a really impressive cybersecurity firm. ConnectWise has tens of thousands of clients. Their software controls other software. They invest like you would not believe in cybersecurity in a way that I feel really confident that they're the least likely ones to be hacked. Am I good at what I do? Are we protecting our clients if we ever had a ransomware attack on any of our clients? No, we haven't, right? But I'm out there choosing cloud whenever I can, because I have great confidence that the best security that's out there is in those cloud providers. They have to. Microsoft, last time I read, Microsoft was investing $1 billion a year in cybersecurity, right? Wow. So can you little guy, me, little Dave, with a decent little sized IT firm in Seattle, can I do the kind of investments that Microsoft or Amazon or ConnectWise, can I do the kind of investments that they can do and have to? No. So yeah, more often than not, you can trust the cloud providers over trying to do it yourself. I would note that Kaseya VSA hack, most of the Kaseya clients were using Kaseya's cloud solution. That's not what got hacked. What got hacked was the old school guys that wanted to run the software themselves.
Makes sense. Okay, so then let's say we have people that are watching this right now thinking to themselves that this makes sense. Clearly, security is something that's worthwhile to pursue. What is the first thing that somebody should do? Is there a gap testing? What if I was a business and I didn't have anything in place and I realized, okay, I'm far behind the curve. Where do I start?
Yeah, I think the answer might be different for a 15-person firm versus a 1,500-person firm. But in effect, right, getting some kind of gap analysis, hiring a reputable firm to come in and take a hard look at what you're doing isn't just something you should do once. When we're working with prospective new clients, one of the things we look at is, do you have annual IT and security planning? Are you doing an annual gap analysis? I've seen large firms that are doing various forms of cybersecurity analysis on a quarterly basis. If you're a credit union or a bank, you'd want to be, there's some regulatory compliance in there that you have to do these things, penetration tests and things like that. So yes, getting a third party to come in and take a look at your systems and look for weaknesses and problems and areas for improvement is an absolute must.
Okay, so then, well, let me see if I can get one more out of you before we start to wrap things up. Okay. If I'm interested in moving forward on this one, I'm sure, like as you said, every company has a different strategy that they would deploy. Mm-hmm. Is there a rule of thumb that you would use, and like what kind of cost association with this? Is it a percentage of the revenue that you should make sure that you have set aside, like the way people set aside money for marketing and advertising? Is cybersecurity a fixed cost that people should expect, or can you paint a picture there?
I have a big dog in the fight, right? Because I provide IT to manufacturers, and I know you guys are listening. If you're interested in our services, we will come in and do an end-to-end analysis of your environment in exchange for the opportunity to win your business, and you'll find a lot of IT firms will do that. Oftentimes, for a smaller company, you can get something done for just a few $1,000s or less. It can just go up from there depending on the size of your organization, how much you've got going on, and how deeply you want to be tested. So it's hard to put a number on that. But for a small business, you can get that done for pretty affordably.
Dave, as we kind of wrap up this this segment, do you have any tips for those of us just going throughout our day to protect ourselves?
Yeah, I have these 5 tips I always share when I do presentations and what have you, and they're designed to be shared with small business owners that aren't really, they don't have an IT provider, right? They're not there yet, and they're trying to get there. So tip 1 is be mindful, right? Make it a priority. Talk with your staff about it. Get educated, right? Be skeptical and guard your money. Have systems in place that money doesn't leave your business unless it's carefully checked in a way that can't be hacked. For example, before a check can be written on my account, there has to be a ticket in our ticketing system. There are multiple layers of security that get in there, and I have to go and approve that ticket. So no phishing, that sort of stuff's going to hit. So be mindful, stay on top of things, right? The second is use antivirus software. Windows Defender is free and it's okay. The problem with antivirus software is people will throw it in there and then leave it unmanaged. It doesn't get patched and updated. People turn it off, all kinds of things crap happen. So if you can, use a good antivirus software and ensure that it's actively managed. We recommend WebRoot if you want a specific recommendation. That's what we currently use. It's very sophisticated, AI based, that sort of stuff. The next is back up your data. Now, ransomware is really adept at getting at your backups. And today, the ransomware criminals will get into your environment and stay in your environment for weeks before they ever let you know they're there. And they'll often figure out how you're backing up your data and get at that stuff too. So, there are some really sophisticated backup systems out there. If you're not going to do that, at least make sure you have a week or better backup sitting on an external hard drive and test it every once in a while. Because people think they're backing up stuff and then realize they can't restore when they need it. So encourage strong passwords. I recommend LastPass. There are several things out there. Get a really good password on your LastPass and then allow LastPass to choose your passwords for your sites. Number one thing that happens is people will use the same password on 4 sites. One of them gets hacked. They get your username and password, and then they go try it on a bunch of other sites, and next thing you know, they're in your banking. And the final tip is multi-factor authentication. A lot of manufacturers are going to these YubiKeys, which are a really slick way to have multi-factor. What does multi-factor authentication means? Password is something you know. That's one thing you can validate. A YubiKey or a text message to your phone or an authenticator app is something you have. And the two together are extremely difficult to hack. I mentioned earlier that the number one way that the bad guys are getting at us is through phishing emails. And they'll direct you to a site that looks just like Office 365. You put in your username and password. Moments later, they're logging into your account. If you have a YubiKey set up or MFA, they can't get in. So those are the 5 big tips that I share with people. And on the MFA thing, turn it on everywhere you can. I was surprised to find out that Bank of America didn't default that. I had to go turn it on. Wells Fargo as well. But I have MFA on LinkedIn, on Facebook, you name it. I turn it on wherever I am. And is it a hassle? Sure. But, getting ransomware, even on your home PC, is a pretty big hassle. So there you go.
Well, that's great advice. Thank you, Dave. So now, before we wrap up this one, if people are watching and want to reach out to you, what would be the best way for somebody to contact you?
Well, they can shoot an email to sales@cyberstreams.com, and somebody on my staff will pick that up and get back to you probably in 10 minutes. You can also call us at 206-388-3084, and somebody will pick up the phone in 2 rings.
Fantastic. Well, Dave, thank you for today. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation and talking about CMMC and ITAR compliance. So for all those that are watching this one, stay tuned. We'll be having our second part.